McGovern.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee for being here, and I've worked with both of them on a lot of human rights issues over the years, and I appreciate their leadership, and I guess and let me just also preface my questions by saying I think there is no equivocation on our side in terms of condemning Hamas for what happened on October 7th. There aren't adjectives enough to describe how horrific those attacks were, and that they're also, a gross violation of international human rights law. There's no question about that. But we also have, but everybody has to be held up to international law as well as U.S. law. And, and what the president has done is basically said he wanted to withhold some weapons, mainly the 2-ton bombs, from being used in Rafah. And there's 1.3 million people who are right now in Rafah. Does anyone know what the blast radius of one of those 2-ton bombs is?
About 4 foot warfare.
Yeah, so that's about a quarter of a mile. Quarter of a mile. It is hard to protect civilians when you're dropping a bomb that has a blast radius of a quarter of a mile. You both agree on that?
My understanding is it's about 115 feet is the blast radius. If it has a JDAM kit on it, which makes it precise.
Well, we're hearing different, Mr. Yeah.
And there's been some previous films where the bomb, 2,000-pound bomb stopped, and buildings
Collapsed. Right.
It was precise. The bomb was precise. It hit where it was supposed to hit. But as a result, because of the radius, 3 or 4 residential buildings collapsed, killing thousands of people.
Well,
Precise bomb.
Well, and let me ask Chairman McCall, do you believe that somebody can be a friend of Israel but also be a critic of the Netanyahu government?
Of course, any democracy has that right.
Right.
If I could mention the 2,000-pound bombs, they, first, I think evacuating the city is key.
Right.
And as Ron Dermer's told me, they're not going to start evacuating until they see an imminent threat of an invasion. Now you're seeing 500,000 now have left Rafah. That means there are about 1 million left.
So, right, but we're being told, so there's a bunch of issues here, right?
Yeah.
One is getting people out of Rafah, but where did they go? And we're being told by humanitarian organizations there isn't the infrastructure to be able to accommodate those that are leaving in such huge numbers. We also know from virtually every humanitarian organization and the United Nations and whatever other group, that there is a famine happening in Gaza as we speak. People are without food and medical supplies, and so this is this is not merely okay. Today we're going to bomb, so tomorrow we're going to bomb. So today move, and there's a place for people to go. I guess let me ask you a question. You both know what the Leahy Law is, right?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. The Leahy Law would prohibit U.S. assistance to a foreign security force when there is credible information that the unit has committed a gross violation of human rights. Is that about right?
Yep.
Without saying whether or not there are any units in the Israeli military that qualify for this, if they did, would you favor the withholding of aid to those units? Would you think Israel should be exempt from the Leahy laws?
If we go back to Reagan, I know he cited quite a bit. In that case, there was a violation of the international humanitarian laws and U.S. laws, and to the extent they were using cluster munitions. In this case, we have a national security memo.
What?
In this case, we have a national security memo signed by the Secretary of State expressly stating that Israel is not in violation of international
Well, I'm just
humanitarian laws. And in fact, they say they're consistent with the Foreign Assistance Act.
Well,
That's
yeah,
this
but I
administration.
guess I'm actually asking a hypothetical. If in fact they were deemed to be in violation of the Leahy Law.
I think what Reagan did is a good example.
Yeah, I'm looking at the tweet, entry from Reagan's diary in 1982 when he blocked some weapons to Israel because of the Israeli military attacks on Lebanon that Reagan thought went too far. And this is what he said. He said, "I was angry. I told Begin that it had to stop or our entire future relationship was endangered. I used the word Holocaust deliberately and said the symbol of his war was becoming a picture of a 7-month-old baby with his arms blown off. He told me he had ordered the bombing stopped. I asked him about artillery fire. He claimed the PLO had started that and Israeli forces had taken casualties. End of call. 20 minutes later, he called to tell me that he'd order an end to the barrage and plead for our continued friendship." I mean, that's Reagan's words directly. You're also aware what Section 620I of the U.S. Foreign Assistance Act is, right? I mean, that basically it says that a transfer of arms to a country, that we would stop a transfer of arms to a country that frustrates humanitarian aid from being delivered to people at risk, right? Again, without saying that Israel has violated this or not, if it was deemed that Israel was in violation of that, would you favor that we actually enforce the U.S. law, or do you think Israel should be exempt from that?
No, I think as Reagan, he applied international law because of the cluster munitions found they were in violation.
Right, but he got
And
Begin. He
therefore-
got Begin to stop. He got Begin to act. I mean, Netanyahu says he's going full steam ahead into Rafah. So I mean, I think that's. I mean, the deal is that Reagan got his desired result with the threat of withholding weapons.
And I know you're speaking in hypotheticals.
Yeah, I
I'd
am.
like to cite to you what this administration said on that very point.
Right.
The Secretary of State signed a national security memo that said, quote, "We do not currently assess that the Israeli government is prohibiting or otherwise restricting the transport or delivery of U.S. humanitarian assistance within the meaning of Section 6201 of the Foreign Assistance Act." So that is the Biden administration's words, not mine. And I know you're talking about hypotheticals.
Yeah,
I would agree with you.
No,
If there's a violation of international law, then I would do what Reagan did.
Right, and because, but as I read your bill, if your bill had been law when Reagan was president, he would not have been able to do what he did. Am I missing something here?
Not if it's in violation of international
Well, I mean,
law,
I mean,
the Foreign Assistance Act.
well, I mean, so basically you're saying that if it is determined that Israel is in violation of the Leahy Law or is in violation of Section 620I of the U.S. Foreign Assistance Act, if it is determined that they are, then the United States should withhold aid to Israel.
I think in that case, I would do what President Reagan did. This bill would not prohibit if they are in violation of international law, but the fact is this administration held that they were not in violation of international law.
But if the administration were to determine that, you would be fine with them withholding aid to Israel?
If there is a determination in violation of international law,
Or
in
US
violation
law,
of the
or US
in
law.
violation of the Leahy
right.
amendments,
Right.
that would draw concerns, but that is not the case here. In fact, if you look at the ratios, I mean, if you look at the ratios of Mosul, which is the closest comparison we have of urban warfare, it was 5 to 2. That means for every 2 ISIS-K killed, 5 innocent civilians were killed. If you look at what's happening in Gaza, the ratio is 2 to 1, which means for every Hamas killed 2 civilians. So that actually Israel's doing a better job than the Americans did in Mosul and Iraq.
Well, and again, I have been a critic of the U.S. when we have, in my opinion, violated international humanitarian law as well. I mean, we are not perfect, and nobody is saying we are. Yet there are these, there are standards, and the president is using executive authority, which he has the right to do so, to try to prevent, basically kind of what Reagan was trying to do as well, trying to prevent a further humanitarian crisis in Rafah. I mean,
If I could just comment, in Reagan's time, what did Reagan do? He consulted with Congress because we have the Article I authorities to approve these weapon sales, which Mr. Meeks and I did, and we appropriate the monies for a specific intent. There was in this case, there's been no discussion with Congress. They've run around and done all this without giving any information to the United States Congress.
And hopefully you're getting a briefing from the administration, but they're not stopping aid. I mean, I just got a headline from the Wall Street Journal that, a huge amount of weaponry is being sent over to Israel as we speak. What he is doing is he's temporarily withholding this, trying to get a result that he wants, and that is no more civilian casualties. I mean, I think his view is that the more civilians that are killed in Gaza, the more radicalized the population is going to be. That doesn't undercut Hamas. It does the opposite. And I think that none of us would be human if we did not, see the pictures and hear the firsthand accounts of what is happening in Gaza. If our hearts didn't break, just as our hearts broke when we saw what happened on October 7th. And so I'm just, and again, I mean, I want to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a statement from the Human Rights Watch that came out today, basically saying Israelis attacking known aid worker locations. Whether that
For the unanimous consent request without objection. So
I mean, obviously, the Foreign Affairs Committee needs to do its due diligence, but, I mean, there is a concern that humanitarian aid is not getting to people who need it, and that, again, the use of these 2-ton bombs, I mean, 2 tons, in and of itself, I mean, the idea that it's a little footprint, I don't believe, I mean, that's just not the case. Dropped in an area where there is 1.3 million people,
I don't think that's that's Israel's intent here. I would argue that we dropped these bombs in Iraq. The goal is to have evacuations to a humanitarian zone. The value of these bombs is
And is there a humanitarian zone for people to
destroy
go
the
to?
tunnel network that provides the weapons and safe haven for Hamas, and to hit large structures that don't involve civilians.
Well, let me ask you both. Are any of you concerned about the way Netanyahu's government has prosecuted this war in terms of civilian casualties in Gaza?
Well, let me just say, Hamas has blocked most of these checkpoints. They
But we're not
destroyed
arming,
areas.
we're not arming
Hamas they killed Israeli soldiers trying to move weapons in.
And we're not debating.
I'm sorry, humanitarian
And
systems in Gaza.
nobody here is debating.
And
No one
Egypt
here
is
is defending
stopping the
Hamas.
Rafah crossing right now.
Nobody here is. Nobody here is defending Hamas. We all condemn what Hamas did. They are horrific, awful, and no adjectives can describe them. I get that. But the people that are caught in between Hamas and Mr. Netanyahu are, those are the civilians, the women and the children, the elderly people. There are people who are not militants here. I guess maybe some people believe everybody is, but the reality is we know that there are civilians that are being targeted, and I think that's what the president is trying to avoid.
Well,
because he thinks it will be counterproductive.
Yeah.
And I agree with him.
Well, let me just say, I agree with you to the extent the evacuation will take 4 weeks before any military operation begins. I agree with you. The humanitarian zone has to be established with a structure and tents and humanitarian aid and assistance to take care of these people. And I know that is Israel's intent. They need the evacuation to happen. They need 4 weeks, but they do need a safe humanitarian zone to go to. I completely agree with that.
And Mr. Meeks.
And the president has asked for that. That's what the president has continually said. Show me the plan.
Right. And where is it?
What
Have
we're
you
gonna
seen the
do.
plan?
No, I'm not seeing the plan.
It has been submitted
And
to the
The
administration.
administration says they have not seen, Jake Sullivan said today, They have not seen a plan.
The ambassador Herzog told me they had, so I don't know who's
But
talking.
he said they have not seen a plan.
Well, maybe you could hook up a conference call with them to make sure that everybody
So we
sees
have
what
not
everybody
seen a
says they've been
plan.
passing.
And, you know, when we talk about, you know, and Mr. McCall is correct, when we said we were going to go to the region to talk to Saudi Arabia and talk to a number of other countries and to Israel, like we have. Because what I am concerned about by completely disregarding that and by some of Mr. Netanyahu's comments, no matter what the president says, and the president's been trying to talk to him for a long time behind the scenes in a diplomatic way. The one that has made the public statements, of course, has been the prime minister. But I'm also concerned about how do we get so that the people of Israel can live in peace? Talking about the end result. And we talked about allies. I mean, when I saw for the first time when Iran attacked Israel, Israel didn't have to stand by itself.
Right.
Israel had the United States, it had Jordan, it had Saudi Arabia, all working collectively to protect Israel, which gives me what I think is important for the end result. And when I talk to the Saudi Arabians now, they say if Israel continues to go into Rafah and thousands of innocent people continue to die, then they can no longer talk about normalization with Israel. And as I talk to ambassadors and to some of the foreign leaders, that's their concern also. What happens in the end result? And they are all saying that what the president is doing, our allies and our friends, is exactly the right thing, that we can finally have peace in the Middle East where the Israelis can live without having fear of being attacked, and the Palestinians have a place that they can call their own. That should be all of our goals.
Well, I don't want to belabor this point, but you know, one of my concerns is that it appears to me that the lives of Palestinian civilians in Gaza is becoming an afterthought. And you know, I was watching some of the news programs over the week, and I'm sure you were as well. I heard Senator Graham say, you know, we should do it. They should do whatever they need to do. You know, we dropped a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They got to do whatever they got to do. That doesn't indicate to me that he cares very much about what happens to innocent civilians in Gaza. I am deeply, deeply worried. This is a terrible humanitarian catastrophe, and I think what the president is trying to do is to see whether he can lessen that. At the same time, you know, ensuring Israel's security and helping Israel move to, as Mr. Meek said, a different day. There seems to be, you know, some desire by a lot of Arab nations who have never been particularly helpful in the past to want to be part of helping Israel move forward to a better day. I worry that, you know, a massive civilian casualties in Gaza are going to make that impossible. I also worry, as the president does, that massive civilian casualties in the long run benefits Gaza. Benefits Hamas and not Israel. This is a terrible, terrible tragedy. And again, you know, this is not in any way to excuse what Hamas did. It is awful. It is evil what they did. It is to simply say that as a friend of Israel, I think what the president is trying to do is to guide this government to making better choices so that, you know, more and more innocent people don't die. Again, this is not about going after Hamas. It is about protecting civilians. And in any event, I appreciate both of you, but I think what we're trying to do here, again, just one thought, why didn't we do a hearing or a markup on this?
I think because of the urgency of the issue.
Right, but you could have done a
And I
hearing
find
today.
it coincidental that all of a sudden the administration is giving us notification of $1 billion of weapons now to
Right, no, I
go
that's
to Israel.
yeah.
But having said,
Also, that
can I just say I agree?
on this bill.
Yeah.
The administration has told you what they felt about this bill.
So
specifically.
let me just say that I've met with Cindy McCain. I've talked to the Israelis. It's in your best interest to open up all routes. Hamas is getting in the way. So
But they
Egypt-
haven't.
But
they
it's in
haven't.
their best interest to provide that
Right.
humanitarian zone that they can go to before an invasion occurs.
But they haven't, and you
they
know,
need to.
for all, yeah, well, but I mean, it's easy for us to say that they
Well,
should.
they've begun the
No, it's
preparation.
easy to say they should when there are people that are starving, and there are people without medical aid. And so but I wish you guys would have done a hearing on this.
I agree.
Because I think, the Foreign Affairs Committee is a better place to have this discussion than the Rules Committee. But I think this is the wrong way to proceed.
Well,
Yeah.
I agree with David Cameron, UK Foreign Secretary. He said blocking these weapons is not a wise path. Now, what he's saying, I think all this, without defying congressional intent, could have been done in a private diplomatic channel.
It has been
And that's
attempted to.
unfortunate.
It has been attempted to do in a private
Right, and
diplomatic
I don't know what private
And-
conversations went
and
on
I-
before this.
And I keep hearing all these weapons. It's not all these weapons. The only weapon that the president said that he would not send is the 2,000-pound bombs, a single order. It's not all these weapons. It's one delivery of 2,000-pound bombs. That's it.
Right.
So
Well, I
it's
haven't
no
been
more
briefed
than
by
that.
the administration. I don't know what's true
Well-
or not. We don't know what's being withheld.
Well,
This
I-
has not been a
I-
very
I- I-
transparent
I think
administration.
this is
political win
a bad move. With that, I yield back.
Chair, thanks, agenda